Hi guys, welcome to this video. In the previous video, we learned about conditional statements. And in this video, we will actually code them up in Python. Now, before we start with the code of conditional statement, I thought it's a good idea that we revise the concept of indentation in Python. If you remember, indentation basically tells Python that a particular set of lines of code belongs to a certain code block. Like in our example, it belongs to the if or the else code block. You can do indentation using two ways in Python. You can either give 4 spaces, as we had discussed earlier, or you can give 1 tab space. The thing about indentation is Python actually takes it very seriously. If you give this indentation randomly anywhere in the code where it's not required, then it will throw an error. Like in this case, I am just giving indentation randomly between two numbers. As you see, A equals 5 and B has 4 space or tab space. And then when you run this code, you will realize that there is an indentation error, unexpected indent. But if you just replace, say, this indentation by some if statement. So we are going to write here if, and in the if statement, we will say 3 equals 5. And if statements are followed by colon, and then run this code, you will see that the indentation error disappears. So initially, we were giving an indentation. It was not supposed to be there. Therefore, it gave an error. Similarly, consider this example. In this example, Python actually expects you to give some kind of indentation here. Let's run this code. And you see expected an indented block after if statement on line 1. Because Python knows that when you have used the colon, all the other statements belong to this if block. And that's why it gives you an indentation error saying expected an indented block. So what you are going to do here, you either give 4 space 1, 2, 3, 4 and then run and there is no problem, or you are going to press on tab and then run. Again, there is no problem. So when working with statements like if, else statements, and also in the coming videos you'll see more other statements. In that case, whenever you want to denote a code block, you have to give a colon and you have to give indentation for any statements that follow. Now, another interesting thing about indentation is when you are working in Jupyter Notebook, the notebook already gives indentation for every code block. So let's type here if 3 equals 5 and colon. And once you enter, you see the next line start with a 4 space indentation. Now, this is a feature of Jupyter Notebook. You might get this feature in some other editors, but you may not get them in a lot of spaces. So be careful of this. Most of the times you'll have to provide your own indentation. The second useful concept of Python programming is commands. So commands are basically part of the code that do not get executed by Python. But the reason we have command is it helps us understand what part of code does what. These are like little notes that you write to yourself between the code. The way to write a command in Python is using the hash symbol. So see, we have written 2 lines of code here. When we execute this cell, only the first line gets executed because the second one is actually a command in Python. Let me uncomment the second line and get rid of the indentation and rerun this cell. You see, now second line is also executed and you can comment back again and run, and you will see only the first line is executed. Next, coming to our conditional statements. Before we start with conditional statements, I want you to revise the comparison or conditional operators that we have learned. So double equal means whether this quantity is equal to this quantity. We have not equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and so on. So this is our first if statement. We have a variable x with the value of 1 and we check if x is equal to 1 and then print. In this case, when you run this code, you will find out that the statement is going to be printed in the parentheses. Why? Because the condition is true. So here, as you realize, we are printing that condition in the if statement if the if statement is true. Suppose I change the value x equals 3. And now if you run this code, nothing is going to be executed because now the condition in the if statement is not true. Therefore, print is not going to be executed. Let's see another example, this time with else. So we have now 2 values, which are 5 and 10, and you compare them. If this condition is true, which a is greater than b, in this case 5 is greater than 10, which this condition is not true, then you print a is greater than b. Otherwise, the code runs in the else block and then you print A is smaller than B. So in this case, A is actually smaller than B. So this condition, the first condition, is false. Because it's false, we'll come to the else group. And the statement in the else group is A is smaller than B. So this is exactly how the if-else statement works. Therefore, when you run this, you will get to see that A is smaller than B is executed. Suppose instead here A is equal to 5. You change the A to 15. What do you think? What will happen in this case? You can pause the video between and think the answer if you would like. Let's run this code. And basically, because A now is greater than B, the first condition is going to be executed. Therefore, A is greater than B is going to be printed. So this is how if-else works in Python. The third example is using if, elif, and else statement. So if you remember, we talk about multiple conditions, and whenever you have multiple conditions, then you need to program with the elif statement. Suppose you have the value of A as 8, the value of B as 10. The first condition is whether A is 10 and B is 10. Basically, we are checking whether both numbers are greater than 10. Then second condition is when both numbers are greater than 5. And the third condition is that anything that's apart from these two conditions. Now, in this case, because both are actually greater than 5, you'll get the output which gets executed from the elif block. So let's run this. So what happened here is that if block doesn't execute it because A is not greater than 10, false, and B is greater than 10, but false and true turns out to be false. Therefore, this block is not executed. Then we came to the elif block and both numbers are greater than 5. Therefore, this block is executed. Suppose I change the value of A to 3. Now, this condition is not true. Also, this condition is not true. In that case, it will finally print what is given in the else block because both the conditions are not met. So when you run this code, you will find out the result is conditions are not satisfied. So next, let's take a problem. The problem that we have is you want to take an input from a user, let's say a variable x, and print even. If the number is divisible by 2, otherwise print odd. Input function is used to take input in Python. For now, do not focus too much on functions because we are going to work with them in great detail in the upcoming videos. But for now, just understand. This line of code basically says that take an input from user and save it to the variable x. So let's run this code. Now I have a box where I can put some number. Suppose I put number 45. 45 is actually an odd number. So the basic if-else condition stays the same if x modulus 2 equals to 0. If you remember, modulus was the operator to get the remainder. So basically we are saying if any number divided by 2 gives a remainder of 0, then it's an even number. Otherwise, it's an odd number. So when you run this, you will find out that it's an odd number. So as you see, it's an odd number. This is basic mathematics, nothing complicated about it. We run the code again, and this time we'll actually give an even number. Let's say we give a big even number, 1, 4, 4, 5, 6, 8. And then click enter. So this is actually an even number because when you divide it by 2, the remainder is 0. So let's check this problem too. We are going to take input from the user in variable y and print grade A if y is greater than 90 and print grade B if y is greater than 60 but less than or equal to 90 and grade F otherwise. So we are going to run this cell. Let's try this. Suppose my score is 67. Type here 67 and click enter. And as you see, it's not grade A because it's greater than 60 but less than 90. Therefore, we get grade B. And let's say suppose I give any number less than 60. So let's run this and this time 59. And then enter. As you see here, this condition, the first condition is false because 59 is not greater than 90. Second condition is false too because 59 is not greater than 60. And then finally, the last condition will be executed, in this case, which I'll get a grade of F. Suppose you wanted to add another grade here, so you can just copy paste this condition and make sure that you don't have indentation for elif. And this time you change it to 40. And if y is greater than 40, then you receive grade C. And now let's run this code. And let's say you get 41. Enter. You see, now you receive grade C. Thank you for watching this video.